If you want to join a top tech company like Google or Meta at a senior level like lead engineer, engineering manager or principal engineer, you'll have to go through a bunch of system design interview rounds. You can go through hundreds of videos to learn about system design, but that will only get you so far. You need a solid strategy and an expert guide. Today, I'll be your guide giving you that strategy. Hi, I am Vinay Bansal, an engineering manager. I've been a manager and senior manager at top tech companies, and I've conducted hundreds of system design interviews for these exact roles. Today, I'm giving you a detailed guide on how to crack these system design interviews at top tech companies like Google. We're going to cover the executional framework, the critical mistakes to avoid, and the right way to practice. So let's get started. Okay, let's talk about foundational points of system design interview. Everything else we talk about today is built on these. First, you need to understand the interviewer's role. Now listen carefully, this is important. The person across the table, your interviewer, may not be a better engineer than you. They might not even be better at system design in general. But for the specific problem that they are giving you, they are the world's foremost expert. Why? Because they have asked this exact question a dozen of times. They have practiced it themselves, they have seen every possible solution, every common mistake, and every clever shortcut. So when they interrupt you or push you in a certain direction, they are not trying to argue with you. They are actually trying to guide you. They have a checklist of things that they need to see, and they are giving you hints to get there. Your job is to be humble. Listen. Don't get defensive. Work with them. The second truth is about the language you need to speak. I've had many people asking me, what if I'm in a Google Cloud interview but I only know AWS? Well, don't worry about it. It's fine. You can say S3, you can say SQS, you can say DynamoDB. They won't be offended. Interviewers at top tech companies are trained not to focus on specific product or tools, but rather focus on concepts. The interviewer's job is to translate product names, but what they will not translate is a weak understanding of the fundamentals. Your fluency in the concepts like caching, load balancing, message queues, database choices, and so on is what's being tested. The product name is just a detail. So let's be clear. Understanding the interviewer is your guide, and don't get hung up on specific tools. Now, with that foundation set, let's get into the execution playbook we will use in the interview itself. Alright, the 45-minute clock has started. The interview gives you a vague one-sentence problem like design photo sharing service or design a ticket booking system. Don't panic and don't jump straight into drawing solutions. Your job now is to execute a clear 4-part playbook. This is a structure that will guide your entire interview. It ensures you don't miss a step and that you show the interviewer exactly what they need to see. The first step is to get clarity on the scope and the constraints. This is the most important part of the interview. Your goal is to take control and turn an ambiguous problem into a concrete plan. You need to ask clarifying questions until you have a clear picture. Start with functional requirements. Ask directly, what are the critical features for this system? For a photo sharing service, is it just about uploading and viewing photos? Or do we also need commenting, tagging, and a news feed? Who are the users? Are they mobile clients, web clients, or both? Next, define the non-functional requirements. These are the constraints. This is a critical step that separates senior candidates from junior ones. Junior engineers build things that work, whereas senior leaders build things that work at scale and are reliable. You need to ask, what are our goals for latency? Does this news feed need to load in under 200 milliseconds? What is the availability target? Is it okay if the system is down for a few minutes a year, or does it need to be highly available like 99.99%? Discuss trade-offs like what is more important for the system, consistency or availability? Finally, do a quick back of the envelope scale estimation. Don't spend too much time here, just 2 minutes maximum. Just show that you can think about numbers. Estimate things like how many users we will have, how many requests per second should we handle, and how much storage we will need per year. Previously, this estimate was given a lot of importance, but now not that much. And remember, Consistency here is more important than correctness. The interviewers knows it's an estimate. What they care about is that you use the numbers you choose consistently throughout rest of your design. Now that you have your requirements, you can start drawing the design. But start simple. Resist the urge to build a complex, over-engineered system from the beginning. Your goal here is to sketch the high-level view. Draw the big boxes and arrows. Where is the client? Where is the load balancer? What are your main backend services like user service or photo upload service? What kind of database are you thinking of? MySQL, NoSQL, or a cache like Redis? Will you need a message queue or a cache? Once you have the basic components on the whiteboard, trace one or two key user requests through the system. For example, let's trace the path of a user uploading a new photo. The request comes from the mobile client, hits a load balancer, and then goes to the API gateway which routes it to the photo upload service. This proves your high-level design is logical and actually works. Now, get ready for a deep dive into these components. At this point, the interviewer will pick an area and ask you to zoom in. You should expect to be pushed here. If the interviewer is challenging your choices and asking for more details, it's not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that interview is working. Embrace the deep dive. This is where you demonstrate your real technical depth. They might point to your database and ask, why did you choose this? You cannot just say I'll use NoSQL since it is fast. You need to justify your choices with principles for that specific problem. For example, for the user social graph, I will use a graph database like Neo4j. The reason is that graph queries for finding mutual friends will be far more efficient than doing complex joins in a relational database. Or for a message queue, to handle notifications, I would use a message queue like RabbitMQ or SQS. This decouples a notification service from the services that produce events, which means if the notification service is slow, it won't slow down the entire system. Be prepared to justify every single component you drew in your high-level design. Your database choices, your cache strategy, your message queue. Your choices define your path. When you choose a component, your interviewer isn't judging you on the choice itself, but on how well you handle its consequences. It's the logic behind your trade-offs that gets you hired. Next, you need to focus on scaling, bottlenecks, and trade-offs. This is the pro move. This is how you show you are a senior leader. Even before the interviewer asks, you need to start finding the weak points in your own design. Look at your diagram and say, a potential bottleneck I see is the database for our newsfeed. It's going to be very read heavy. To scale this, we could introduce a caching layer using Redis to serve the most common request, and we could implement read replicas to distribute the load. Talk about how you would scale different components. Discuss database sharding, CDNs for static assets, the trade-offs between different consistency models. This shows the interviewer that you don't just design for today, you plan for the future. It proves you think about real-world problems like reliability, cost, and performance. So this playbook is your map for the entire interview. Follow it and you will cover everything a top tech company is looking for. Now, before I tell you in detail how to prepare and practice for these interviews, let me quickly cover some of the most common mistakes I see candidates make all the time as an interviewer at Google. Avoiding these is just as important as following the playbook. The first critical mistake is the premature solution. This is where a candidate hears a keyword like social network and immediately start drawing a load balancer and a web server. They jump straight into a solution before they even understand the problem. This is a huge red flag. It shows the interviewer you can't handle ambiguity. You must fight the urge to start solving. Stick to the playbook. Your first job is always to ask questions and define the scope. Second common mistake is getting stuck in the weeds. I've seen many candidates completely derail the interview by getting hung up on one small part of the problem. They'll spend 10 minutes trying to get the storage calculation exactly right, or they'll get stuck debating a minor configuration. Remember, those are rough estimates. They are not the most important part of the interview. If you find yourself stuck on a detail that isn't critical to the core architecture, you need to say this. Neil, I think this is a detail we could spend more time on, but for the purpose of this high-level design, let's assume X for now and move on. We can come back to it later if we have time. This shows the interviewer that you can prioritize and won't let minor details block the entire project. The third mistake is what I call the canned architecture. This is the candidate who has memorized one or two famous system designs like Netflix or Twitter architecture, and they try to force that solution onto whatever problem they are given. This immediately tells the interviewer that you are not thinking from core principles. You are just reciting from memory. Every problem has a unique requirements. A design for a high throughput streaming service is not the right solution for a banking transaction system. Don't be the candidate with a single hammer and looking for a nail. Listen to the requirements and build your design from the ground up. And the fourth and the most important mistake, arguing instead of collaborating. Now, let me be very clear. It is good to defend your design. It is often expected. When the interviewer challenges you, you should be able to explain the trade-offs you have made and why you believe your approach is solid. That shows conviction. But there is a huge difference between defending your design and arguing with the interviewer. Defending is explaining your reasoning. Arguing is dismissing the interviewer's prompt as wrong without exploring it. Remember what I said in the beginning. The prompts are not attacks. They are hints. They are course corrections. If you dismiss them, you are ignoring a guide who is trying to help you. Be confident but be humble. Avoid these 4 mistakes and you will stand out from the majority of candidates. Okay, so now you have the playbook and you know critical mistakes to avoid. Let's talk about the final piece. How do you actually prepare for this? This is where most of the candidates get it wrong. They practice incorrectly and it costs them the job. I am going to give you a plan that actually works. Almost every guide you come across says practice by designing Netflix. All interview questions online look like this: design Uber, design YouTube, and so on. But this is very misleading for candidates preparing for these interviews. See, that's a fine starting point to see the big picture, but it is definitely not enough to get you hired. The single most important key to your preparation is this: you must practice for depth, not just breadth. Why is that? If you think practically, the real job of a senior leader isn't about breadth. As an engineering manager or principal engineer at Google, you are not building all of Google search or YouTube. You might be leading a team that goes incredibly deep on one specific component, like video recommendation system that powers the YouTube homepage. The interview is designed to test just that. Can you go deep and solve hard specific problems? So, how do you practice for this kind of depth? Where do you find these problems? You create them yourself. Here is the 2-step method. Step 1. You start broad. Pick a large familiar system like YouTube, Netflix, or Uber. Sketch out the complete high-level architecture. Understand all the major components and how they connect. The API gateway, microservices, databases, cache, and message queues. This is your starting map. Step 2. You go deep. Now, look at your high-level map and point to a single component. That component is your new practice problem. Point to the YouTube search bar. Your new problem is design a high-performance type-ahead search suggestion service. Point to the subscribe button. Your new problem is design the fan-out notification system that alerts millions of users when a creator uploads a new video. Point to the video player itself. Your new problem is design a global CDN and caching strategy for video segments. This is how you generate an infinite number of realistic deep dive problems for practice. In your interview, you may also encounter fundamental computer science problems framed as system design problems. For example, design a cache where every key has its own custom expiration time, or even design a garbage collector for a long-running service. These questions are harder because there's nowhere to hide. They test your core engineering skills, not your memory. Now, here is your practice regimen for putting this all into practice. First, do timed drills. At least 3 times a week, set a 45-minute timer and work through one of these deep dive problems. You must speak your solution out loud. Second, do mock interviews. Find a colleague and grill each other. There's no substitute for practicing under real pressure. And third, master your tools. Ask your recruiter what tool the interview will be on. Different companies use different things. It could be Lucidchat, Miro, or something else. For Google interviews, it's often Google Docs because it's easy for them to collaborate and document. Whatever the tool is, make sure you are fluent with it before the interview starts. So there you have it, the complete playbook for the system design interview. The system design interview feels intimidating because it's ambiguous. But with this framework, that ambiguity is now your advantage. With this guide, you'll not just be responding to questions, you'll be leading the interview and eventually be clearing it. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And if this strategy was helpful, please give it a like and subscribe for more content to help you win in your career. Thank you for watching. See you next time.